Jambo, fellow adventurers, it's Mike Dooley with what will now be a daily spiritual tune-up. For those of you feeling anxiety over coronavirus, and for those of you ready to use this interlude as a supercharged time to get grounded in truth, to discover your power, see life's beauty like never before, so that as and when this passes, and it most surely will, you can start the most exciting chapter of your entire life. And to do this today, what I want and what I expect is going to happen is I'm going to share with you a little story about Adam and Eve. I'm going to get a little bit biblical. I'm going to interpret the Bible. And thanks for the hellos. Thanks for the hearts. Love you guys so much. And then I'm going to come up with some application. And I think my biggest emphasis on teaching is to begin with truth, because the truth sets you free. It empowers you. It frees you. It glorifies you. And then you can live like you have never lived before. So, Adam and Eve, what does that have to do with a pandemic? It has a whole lot to do with a pandemic. It's a mythical, biblical story. I do believe, pure opinion, that there was not one man and one woman that began it all. But this was a metaphorical story that begins in the Garden of Eden, where pure divinity, having created the physical universe, which is another Garden of Eden, this bastion of perfection and order floating through the cosmos that we now call planet Earth, and many other inhabited worlds. Well, in the beginning, God was on the outside looking in. And given how successful the creation was, how beautiful and mind-bending and symbiotic, all of the elements, all of the creatures, God wanted to get a closer look. You know, God, not God of a religion, even though this is from the Bible, but divine intelligence created this. That's why there's such order and perfection and an inclination for all to thrive. So God created humanity to have a new window into this creation. Now, what does God create with? Herself. Not a man or a woman, but divine intelligence entered these sacred, hallowed jungles of time and space as humanity, so it could peer within at its own creations. This is God. Humanity, all of us, you and me, I say it all the time, are the eyes and the ears of God Almighty come alive in the dream of life. It is a dream, like a nighttime dream. But when you're in the dream, it's as real as can be. Hence the story of Adam and Eve. They knew at the outset that they were of God, by God, pure God, experiencing the physical universe as a holographic experience, as an illusionary experience. They knew that it was a dream. But it was so captivating, it was so spellbinding, it was so beautiful, and love was everywhere that they got more and more entranced with the illusions. Typified by the story of the apple coming from the tree of knowledge. Now, when God was everywhere always at once, not confined to the skin of a human being, because God is still everywhere always at once, but for the portion of God in a being, you forget that you're everywhere always at once. And so seeing this beautiful apple from the tree of knowledge, knowledge is the accumulation of wisdom in a human brain. That's what we know knowledge to be. It's considered finite. It's considered you have to go find it. You have to go learn it. You have to go experience it. Whereas prior to being in the brain, in a body, God knew all things always spontaneously because God was everywhere always at once. Time had not even been invented until the physical universe. So the tree of knowledge is humanity's version of wisdom, limited by what the brain can hold, instead of total omniscience everywhere always at once. And the apple was reflective of the beauty and the spellbinding trance created by these spectacular illusions that you and I pretty much think are real. Matter, time, space. And looking at this apple and wondering whether or not they should bite it. I mean, the aroma, the color, it's like intoxicating. And it was a real bum rap that Eve bit the apple first. This is not woman or man. This is like humanity. And so the story goes, one of the two happened to be a woman, unrelated to, committing the first sin, I'll talk about that, decided to bite into this apple. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. This is a thought form. This is an illusion. It's not reality. They're co-creators of this apple, but biting into it signified a tipping point being reached where they saw the apple as something real, something to contend with, something to nourish their body. All true within the illusions, but not true on a greater scale. Biting into the apple for the nourishment, for the flavor, for the taste, for the fun of it, typified us losing sight of truth, which is it's all illusions that we're creating right now, and falling head over heels out of grace. And this is called the fall from grace. Very bad nomenclature. Terrible idea to call it that because it paints the whole thing as bad. It's not bad. It's a beautiful apple. It's really cool. Who wouldn't want to bite it? But we didn't have to lose the awareness that we are also everywhere, always at once, and that we are the creators of that apple for our sheer joy and enrichment. But so we fell head over heels out of grace. You can't fall out of grace. We fell from grace. Where did we land? In grace. This is all happening inside the mind of God. But not only was the apple good, but you should try a banana. And not only was that fun, but you ought to go swim in the ocean. And we did. And we floundered. And we prospered. And there was still love and still beauty everywhere. And it got to a point where we completely forgot that we're pure divine intelligence. We completely forgot that we are of God, by God, pure God. Why? Because it's so awesome here. It's so beautiful here. This is the product of divine mind, of which we are that mind. So God is infinitely more than me or you, but we are pure God ourselves. We are mini me's of the divine, and we have forgotten that. And what does that mean? The more we forget, and we have forgotten a lot, the further out of control we feel, the more helpless we feel. The more we feel we have to contend with the world, the more we believe that we are independent of the world. We think that the world is happening and then we showed up, byproducts, or to be tested and judged by the divine. We end up creating our own hell. We start hating ourselves. We start comparing ourselves. We start competing and all of this stuff, completely ignorant that when we look into the mirror, we're looking at the eyes of God. And more completely ignorant that when we stare into the eyes of another person, we're staring into the eyes of God Almighty. No matter how lost they may be, no matter how lost we may be. And so suddenly, we've got this rat race going on. We've got competition going on. We lie to ourselves. We lie to other people. But there's a silver lining. There's love everywhere. There's hope everywhere. We're still creators, although we don't know it. Dreams still come true. And so now what we're doing and what this whole thing has turned into is a long haul ascension back into the memory of who we really are. But every now and then throughout humanity, and this could be charted on a graph, our learning curve, the expansion of consciousness, every now and then we get so far off course that we begin creating a hell on earth with fear and etc. And just like in your own human body, when you are twisted with conflict, feeling lost, maybe feeling depressed, feeling excessively sad, even though you are in the mind of God right now, creating it on the fly, suddenly you become overwrought. You need more rest. You're not giving it to yourself. You're not loving a cold or a sickness or an ailment. And what does this do? It's the beginning of a healing. It's a reset button. Time to get your stuff in order. Okay? It's a beautiful thing. But it was brought about because you wouldn't give it to yourself before. You wouldn't see what was already out there. And sometimes even though things are going well in our lives, we might come down with a sickness because at a deeper level, we know our wires are crossed and we're misunderstanding the truth about reality. So the beginning of the healing is something that forces us to kind of lay low, go within, contemplate, chill out, watch a movie, read a book, and then we feel refreshed. And when we get so off track as a civilization, pandemics, earthquakes, Hurricanes, tornadoes, they ain't random. And as Emmanuel said, dictated by Pat Rodgast, Emmanuel is a volume of books, beautiful, beautiful stuff. I remember this because I live in Florida and we get a lot of hurricanes. Always trust a hurricane. It knows exactly where it's most needed. Now, to the physical senses, that's like an insanely insensitive thing to say, and people are suffering and homes are destroyed. But look at the big picture. You have an inner ability to focus with a higher lens. And you can see that while there is chaos in the physical realm, there's an opportunity, which will hopefully be taken, to rearrange priorities. And so right now we have this pandemic. We have this pandemic that's brought about fear. We have this pandemic, which in some cases has brought about rest and, if I may say so, jubilation. It's like a snow day when you're a kid and you don't have to go to school at the last minute. I'm broadcasting from home because Orlando has just now been put down on lockdown. So what can come of this? It's time to start seeing things differently. And you know, it's always easy to say, yeah, they need to start seeing things differently. We all need to start seeing things differently. Until you realize on a conscious level you are of God, by God, pure God, and that everything is unfolding divinely based on our focus, not on God's decisions, that we are creating it and we can recreate that which hurts us, then suddenly we have traction. And the way we're going to do that, I've got some points here, let me read my notes. It's time to start seeing things that we've been missing, beginning with ourselves. Do you love yourself? It's time to start loving yourself. Do you see love everywhere in the world, from nature to humanity? It's time to start seeing that. Do you realize that when one of us falls, we all fall? When one is hurt, we're all hurt. This has turned into a rat race ruled by the almighty dollar. I can't believe me, an Ayn Rand enthusiast, former staunch capitalist and former Republican, to the depths of my soul, would say that. But my gosh, we've got obscene levels of income disparity. We've got obscene levels of self-recognized dignity. We deprive others from an ability to have dignity. Oh, you're not doing it yourself. But when we all play along with the rat race and competition and striving to do our best, we're leaving people behind. And that doesn't serve us. It comes back and bites us. It pokes us. It's called the pandemic or those kind of things. Time to rearrange what's going on. Do you realize that you're not being judged, that you've never been judged? Do you realize it's time to stop judging yourself? Do you realize that you do not have to know sadness to know joy? I know there's contrast, but that's a theoretical thing. You don't have to suffer and wallow in misery to know ecstatic heights of euphoria. You've already suffered and wallowed enough, right? So start allowing yourself, give yourself permission to be happy for no dang reason. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're already enough. You're gorgeous. You're God's only chance to be you. So be yourself. Do you realize that you are worthy of love from self and others? Do you realize that life is not a test? It is not a test. Do you realize God does not give tests? You are God. Heck yes, there's stuff to learn. And how do you know you need to learn it? When you stub your toe, when you fall down, when you catch a cold, when you experience a pandemic. Then it's like bells ringing, bells ringing. There is no test, but you've got crossed wires and there's something to learn. You're not here to be tested. That alone is going to get you off the hook, those things. Do you realize that God is not angry, never has been angry? Do you realize there's no devil and there's no hell and there's no evil that lurks with a mind of its own? Evil is something that we see everywhere. It's real, but it's only in the mind of warped people who, while wanting to do their best, know no better. They are of God, by God, pure God. Have compassion. Do you realize that it is never wrong to err on the side of kindness? We all have a lot to learn right now. I certainly do. I am no saint. I could be way better. I could be more loving, kind to myself and to others. Let's use this time to begin thinking with our hearts instead of our minds. Let's realize we're all in this together. Let's realize that we are all reincarnational aspects of one another. It's not like me and my lineage. It's like me and you, man. I'm here with you. You're here with me. We're both God expressing and seeing life through a different pair of eyes, a different pair of ears, and a different beating heart. All of God and the divine. Well, everybody, that went longer than I thought it would. But what I'm going to be doing every day is, I believe, this is yet to be seen, zeroing in on things that we could see differently. All related to the pandemic, but not talking about the pandemic itself, other than what I've already shared. So peace, love, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to give this similar talk and maybe expand it at the Hay House website and Hay House Instagram. Love all of you guys. Enjoy this opportunity for rebirth, for being born again to the divine within your heart and the hearts of everybody else. Tally ho, every best wish. Thank you, Kristen, Monica, Diane, Kerman, Bonita, Jesse, Jordan, Nikki Pattinson, Julia, Maria. All the best. Have an amazing day. See you tomorrow morning, 9:15 New York time, even though I'm in Orlando, same thing.